Welcome to EV Charging 101. What you need to know before installing a home charger, brought to you by the Running Electric campaign from Équiterre in collaboration with Electric Vehicle Society and with support from Natural Resources Canada. This session is designed for anyone who is new to EVs or considering the switch and wants a clear, practical overview of what's involved in installing a home charger. Over the next 40 to 45 minutes, we'll walk you through the essentials so you can approach your installation with confidence. I'm happy today to be joined by Connor Stewart, a licensed electrician and an EV specialist who will guide us through the key technical and safety considerations. All right, Connor, welcome to the presentation and thanks for helping us out today.
Thanks, Tim.
Connor, let's begin.
So yeah, I think for today, what we're going to cover and what my goal will be is to just really kind of walk everybody through the basics, right? So that when you end the session up today, you got a good starting point on your own specific situation, what you should really hone in on some of these pieces, what's going to make the right charger for you. Some of the things you need to look for installation and some of the things you want to watch out for. I'll share a few, call it horror stories that we've come across. Some of the typical costs that are going to be involved, so you have a sense of what your budget is. So I'll dive right in with the initial sort of basics. Some folks on the call may already be EV drivers. You may be in the market thinking about making the switch. It's important to understand the different types of chargers for your home and what's probably going to be the best fit for you. So I'll start with level one, and I'll talk about level two, and I'll touch on level threes as well. But level one is really no different than the basic outlet that you would use for your TV, your toaster, many appliances around the house. Most people might even have one of these in their garage or outside already. And this can work for you to charge your vehicle. It's not really practical if you're a full battery electric vehicle, because it's going to take a very, very long time to charge your car. Speaking from experience myself, I'm an EV driver. I used a level one this spring when I was up at a friend's cottage, and it took me about 3 days to get about 50% charge added on this setup. So like, if you're somebody that's driving a fully electric vehicle and you're going to be traveling quite a bit, it's probably not going to be very practical for you long term. But for example, if you have a PHEV, like a Chevrolet Volt or some of the other ones, Mitsubishi Outlander, some of these vehicles on the market, this can be perfect for you because it'll take you, 8, 9 hours to charge it up. And that's generally going to be an overnight charge cycle from when you get home to when you go to leave in the morning. And that can be perfectly practical for you. And great option because you'll save quite a bit of money, or you may already have this pretty convenient where you park already. So moving to level two, this is really what's designed to be your most practical solution for at home. That's what it's designed for. It's designed anywhere that you're going to be parked for 6 to 8 hours. So it's the perfect solution for your house. It's also that sweet spot of electrical capacity that your home can support. These chargers will give you about, depends on the size of the unit, but anywhere from 30 to 50 or 60 kilometers per hour that you're charging. So it's for daily use. It's perfect because most people don't travel more than 100 kilometers or 150 kilometers a day in Canada. Some do, but majority of people don't on average. If you're coming home every night to your fueling station, you plug into your level two, it's going to get you up to your 80% charge level that you need on a daily basis. And, the last call out I would say too is that even level ones can be somewhat practical, but in the Canadian winters, they often can't keep up as well because your charging speed will reduce, whereas the level two stays pretty consistent, and it'll help precondition the battery as well. So you'll continue to have a pretty stable and easy experience daily. So it's really going to be your best option, especially if you're fully electric driver. Some of the other advantages to having a home charger, like the number one advantage is convenience. Like if you think about this as someone who's currently driving a gas vehicle and you're making the switch, you're coming home to your fueling station every night. You plug in, there's no need to go to a gas station or any other outlet. It's dramatically cheaper than if you're using any of these public options. Public can be something you want to use, but only on road trips, and you'll save a ton of money. For example, in Toronto and other areas across the country, some utilities have offered these low overnight rate programs whereby, having a charger at home, having it connected to your phone and an app that can control it can allow you to set your time to charge when the electricity is the most cheap or is the cheapest. So, for example, in Toronto, they have a super low overnight rate that is about 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So on the average EV that's, got a 75 kilowatt battery, you're looking at less than $2 to charge your car as compared to, a public level 3 charger, you're probably going to be looking at somewhere between $20 and $30, depending on the time of day. So it's definitely a great investment for your home as well, because it's going to add that convenience, and it's also going to be a value add to your home. We're seeing a lot of developers of new homes adding this in as an option right away. So it's really going to make your life a lot more convenient. You're going to save money on your actual charging costs, and you're going to add some value to your home. So it makes a ton of sense if you're in the market. Now, some of the biggest concerns and considerations with installing a charger is safety. I'm sure everybody's seen things on the news around fires or improper installations. Level 2 chargers are a 240-volt install. This is just like your oven or a high usage appliance. You always want to use a licensed electrician. Do not do this by yourself unless you're a licensed electrician. You don't want to run into a situation where something happens and you put your home and your family at risk. The other thing that we see a lot of too, which is a big no-no, is extension cords. They're not designed for this load from the charger in the car. What happens over time is they start to overheat, and the plug from the charger and into the extension cord starts to melt. And we've actually seen situations where it's completely melted and fused together and you can't remove it. And now you got to throw it out. And they're fortunately didn't have any issues other than that because they caught it soon enough. But make sure, especially if you're going to be installing outside versus like in a covered garage, that you're getting the proper GFCI protections, you're getting proper grounding, and make sure you're getting permits. You should always have permits from your local regulatory body. Any licensed contractor will know that and will file the proper paperwork. And you want to ensure you get a copy of that certificate as well, just for your own peace of mind and for your insurance down the line if something were to happen. We see a lot of unsafe installs out there, and it's worth doing it they're doing it right the first time. I'll share one quick story with you before we move on. We were called into a home in Burlington, and they had installed a charger a few years ago, and the wire size and the breaker that was feeding the wire and the charger was incorrectly sized. It was undersized for the charger. And luckily, what had happened in this case is that the charger had been installed outside on the side of the home in the parking driveway. And ESA, the Electrical Safety Authority in Ontario, had been doing some spot checks on outdoor EV chargers, and this one had not been pulled a permit. So they ended up flagging this for the homeowner, and then the homeowner had called us to come and resolve the issue. And sure enough, it was an illegal install, and it was very fortunate that they got caught, or that ESA had caught this and tagged it out, and they were able to call us in to resolve it. The unfortunate reality is that this homeowner had to pay twice for the installation because there was nothing really that was usable from this work that had been done prior to. But you really want to make sure that you do this right the first time, because it's number one, it's the safety for your home and your family, and number two, it's you don't want to spend extra money having to fix something that wasn't done right in the first place. Choosing the right equipment is another important thing to look at. In Canada in particular, you want to figure out what application am I putting this in? Am I putting it in my garage? Am I putting it outside where it's going to be exposed to the elements? That's the question you should determine yourself first before you start figuring out which unit you should go with. If you're going to be putting it outside, make sure you do look at the specs, because some units are not designed for the cold Canadian winter. And depending on where you are in the country, that can be more severe than other places. Like, I'm in southern Ontario, so it's not too cold, but we do see temperatures -20 and colder. If you're some of the northern parts of Ontario or out west in Quebec, BC, you could be seeing, upwards of -30, -40 Celsius. So make sure that you get a charger that can operate in that environment, because you don't want to be running into a situation where it's really cold out and your charger malfunctions and you can't get where you need to go the next day. Also look for things that are coming in a casing that's meant to handle snow and rain. You're going to want to make sure that it's not going to deteriorate very quickly if it's exposed to those elements. And a lot of chargers are manufactured in places that don't have winters like Canada. So you want to make sure that you do pick something that's going to be right for your application, and it's going to last you long term. The last point to think about when you're selecting your charger is make sure that you take a look at your vehicle first, or the vehicle that you're planning on purchasing. We'll talk more on further slides around sizing that into the panel, but to give you an example, the electric Hummer, the electric F-150, some of the pickup trucks, they have really, really big batteries. If you undersize your charger, you'll run into a situation where it's going to be a bad experience, because you're not going to get enough charge in an overnight period to get you where you want to go. So we've heard of situations even where people have purchased the Hummer because it's got a massive 250 kilowatt battery, and within a period of months they want to get rid of it because they picked the wrong charger for their home, and it's taking far too long to charge. You want to make sure that you consider the battery size in your vehicle to the charger size that you're going to put in your home, so that you have a good experience, right? There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to charge your car up overnight, regardless of the EV and the size of the battery. It's just about picking the right size of charger for your vehicle. And there's a great resource here that's provided by Roulons Electrique. They have a whole breakdown here of Canadian charging stations. There's plenty of high quality Canadian made chargers. It's great to support local, especially in today's environment. And just keep in mind that, like, brand names that you may be familiar with, I won't mention any here, but some that you've heard in the news, they may not be the best, right? Most expensive does not always equal the best in this marketplace. Look at the specifications for your specific application, and line that up, right? And use some of these resources that we're sharing here today to help yourself pick the right type of charger. Some other installation considerations, and particularly with hardware selection, always make sure that you're buying a product that's CSA or UL certified. These are the two regulatory bodies or certifications and regulatory bodies for electronic devices in Canada. Something with this stamp means that it's gone through all the proper testing to ensure that it's safe and it's actually sellable and legal in the Canadian marketplace. So always look for these designations. If they don't have it, don't buy it. Plug-in versus hardwired. So, oftentimes you're going to see people promoting different things. Either or is fine. Again, it kind of comes back to your application. If you're going to be putting this thing outside, it's going to be exposed to the elements and effectively open to the public in the sense that, somebody could walk onto your property and see it. You probably want to go with a hardwired setup, just for safety and to eliminate the risk of theft. You could do plug-in too, but would recommend doing that more inside the home if you have a garage. Smart features in chargers can be great. There's really a couple good benefits with this. One is the scheduling, which we touched on earlier. If you want to, target charging your vehicle when electricity is the cheapest, so in the middle of the night, typically, you can do that with a connected charger that has an app, and you can control it. You can also dial back the load if you're trying to speed or slow down your charging for a specific purpose. And the other thing that depending on where you are in Canada, your specific utility, having a connected charger can make you eligible for different incentive programs. So there's programs called demand response programs, whereby the utility will actually compensate you for being able to tap into your charger and use that as part of their load management. So, not something you have to do, but, if you ever wanted to be eligible for those programs, look at getting a charger with smart features, because then the utilities will actually pay you to have access to your charger. And that will ultimately just even reduce your cost of charging altogether. The other thing, just to call out on the NEMA plugs, just ensure that if you do go with a plug-in option, make sure that you're getting the proper NEMA plug that's designed for EVs. So remember, as I said earlier, around extension cords and things and fusing together, it's the same problem when you just use the NEMA plugs that are designed for ovens or different appliances. They're not actually built for this load and this quick energization. So what happens is they begin to melt. And we've seen even in these applications, when you don't use the proper NEMA plug, you start to see this melting happening in the plug, and it's not what you want to see. Never do you want to see electricity and melting uh, fixtures or appliances. And then the last thing is just connector types, right? Check what your car has and line that up. I mean, this is not a huge deal because there is adapters that go both ways. So the analogy I like to use is if you go to a different part of the world, maybe Asia, Europe, they have different styles of plugs than what we use in North America. And that's effectively similar with charging. If you have a J1772 or an NACS, there's adapters that you can plug in to use either or, depending on the charger and what that setup is. The other thing to call out on connector types is coming into 2026 and beyond, all EVs are going to be built with the NACS connector. So that's the one at the bottom there. They are phasing out the J1772 connector, so those will only be on older vehicles going forward. Some installation considerations continued on the electrical side. So capacity is the biggest portion of this, right? And your panel, which you see on that screen, is ultimately going to determine what we can install or what your contractor can install. A lot of homes can handle a 40 to 50 amp hookup and breaker, but you always want to do a load calculation. Make sure that you're not overriding or overloading your panel with this. If the panel is tight, you can find different load management solutions that can eliminate the need for like a full panel upgrade. But it's not something you want to really gamble with. Like check and see, have your contractor do a proper load analysis, and determine what you actually can support. And then the other thing here is that, like, even if you are tight on power, you may not need to actually do a service upgrade. That may be something that you're told that, hey, I need to do a service upgrade in order to accommodate a 40 or 50 amp breaker. It may be true, but if you're working with a licensed electrical contractor who has a lot of experience in EVs and EV chargers, there's solutions out there that you can actually put onto an overloaded panel. And what it'll do is it'll monitor the load on the panel. And then, for example, at night, when people go to bed, the energy load in the home gets lower. This device will recognize that on the panel level and then start sending the power to the charger so you can charge your vehicle. And this eliminates the need for any panel upgrades, and you can usually fit a larger charger than what your panel would typically allow for. And these are all safe. They're all UL CSA certified solutions that you can use to eliminate having to do a panel upgrade. The other thing to look at here as well is if it is determined that you need a panel upgrade, think about what you're planning to do in the future. Because if you're planning on doing some renos and things like that, you might want to do this in combination, like upgrade your panel, make sure you have enough space for the future, and always check with your local utility. If you're looking at a panel upgrade, any contractor can help you with that. In some jurisdictions, in some neighborhoods, you may not even be eligible to do a panel upgrade. It's really highly dependent on the utility and what they're able to offer to you in the neighborhood. Most utilities have the power available, but there are certain areas where, it's just not going to be possible even if you wanted to. So you do want to know that up front, because you might want to pivot to one of these load management solutions that I was talking about. So typical costs and incentives. So chargers can range quite a bit. I would say like anywhere between 500, 1,200 bucks is what you're going to see for pricing. Installations are going to range. The biggest driver in why cost of installation is different is just the distance from where your electrical panel is to where you're putting your charger and what's in between. That's going to drive the cost up or down. If you have a fully finished basement, or like there's no areas in your home that are sort of open walled, then you might want to consider and ask your contractor, like, are you going to have to make cuts in the hole or in the ceilings or in the walls and things to run the wire through? Because you want to know that up front so that you can budget any of the extra drywall patching and painting that might be part of the work, or have that included with your contractor. A lot of contractors will do that work as well as part of the project. And then again, we've talked about panel upgrades. If they're needed, there'll be another 1,000 to 3,000 on top. This can also range quite a bit. These are rough numbers that you see on the page. It'll really be dependent on your region, and it'll also be dependent on your home. Some homes have what you would call an overhead service, where the utility line comes in off the street overhead on the hydro lines. Others, it's buried underground. Depending on that situation and how your power service comes into your home, it could be less or more expensive. If there's digging and replacement of the wires, if it's an underground service, that'll be more costly than if you have an overhead service and you're doing a panel upgrade. But overall, people generally land all in somewhere around 2 to 3,000 without a panel upgrade. With a panel upgrade, maybe 3 to 5,000, depending on their situation. These are kind of the typical costs that we see. And then as far as incentives go, so there's lots of different rebates and things available. There's a great resource that Équiterre has provided here, and the team at EVS, that kind of breaks down all the eligible rebate programs for homeowners specifically. Right now, provinces like BC and Quebec offer incentives upwards of $350 to $600 per installation. So that's always great if you can take advantage of some of those incentives. If you're in a multi-unit residential setting, you could be eligible for some federal funding if the building is applying for it as a group. But the other thing to call out here on any of these programs is typically you do need to use a licensed electrician, have proof of the installation, and be able to share that certificate of past installation with the regulatory body in your region. So make sure again that you're going to use proper setup, proper equipment, proper contractors to do this work if you're going to be applying for incentives. And then, as I said, some great resources here, such as the Running Electric campaign, which has a whole bunch of details on the different programs available. EV Society has some great resources, Natural Resources Canada, and then our site as well. If you have any direct questions, you can feel free to reach out to us. And we're happy to help. We are a licensed contractor and we operate across Canada. But I'll turn it back over to Tim and the group here, and we can open up with Q&A.
Thanks very much, Connor. Before we do the Q&A, I'm going to jump in on a couple of comments. I haven't heard the presentation, so there are some things the question of plug in versus hardwire. The other consideration, because I've had it happen in the family, if somebody thinks that they're going to move, they might want to opt for the plug-in type of charger. So the charger actually plugs in, and if you know that you're going to be moving, it's great because then you can just unplug it and take it with you. Obviously, that's for inside a garage, as you point out. Outside would be a bit treacherous. The other application, if you happen to have a cottage and you don't want to buy two EV chargers, you can, when you go to the cottage for 2 weeks in the summer, you could unplug your charger at home, take it up, plug it in up there, and same thing in reverse. My aunt has bought an electric car and has a kind of a limited amount of space on her electrical panel, but she was able to safely take 20 amps. So, and it's fine for her. 20 amps for her car and her use is more than enough. Easily gets a full charge overnight based on how much driving she does. And I only mention that because cars sort of come with whatever I don't know what the standard is, over 40 amps. Connor, what's the normal now for most EVs that can charge it? Um,
Yeah, it's sort of the one that comes with the car is typically going to be around 30 amps. That's
okay.
usually the one that you'll see. Yeah. So and
But
and that's usually pretty good for most people for
yeah, I was
sure.
going to say you don't need to charge to the maximum capability of the vehicle.
Yeah.
Sometimes less than that is all you need, depending on your use case. So I'm going to call on Jason. Uh,
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Connor. So I'll start with one of the Q&A questions. Mark asks, does charging to a maximum of 80% of a typical circuit's capacity provide a sufficient margin of safety to avoid things like overheating and fires, or should we reduce it to, let's say, 75%, as some people recommend?
Yeah. So the standard rule is 80%. That's what, for example, ESA requires. So 80% is kind of the rating from your breaker being, for example, if it's a 32 amp charger, you'd have a 40 amp breaker. So, that'll be about 80% at the charger side.
Sounds like you're pretty comfortable with that
Yep.
rating for continuous use.
Yep.
I see James has his hand raised, so I can let James.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Good. Well, we just got the question. We researched it ourselves and found that an incredibly low percentage of fires that occur at home are actually due to the vehicle. So it's all through bad installation. So okay, there was my answer. So good on you guys to talk about safety. I appreciate that.
One of the things, Connor, you can set me straight on this, that is different about an electric car charging device is that it draws power at a very high and constant level. Even high energy use items like your stovetop, they're actually an oven, they're actually cycling on and off to hold it at a certain temperature. And that's very different than a car charger, which is is drawing power at a very high and consistent level, and that sort of requires the right kind of wiring and setup, right? Is that have I captured that correctly?
100%. Like you have this constant, very high load on the system. So having the proper size breakers, wiring, and everything, you need to have that robust setup. Because it's again, as you said, it's not like an oven. It's not cycling. It's pure power coming through that at all times, and even the turn on is a quite a jolt, right, going through there. So you want to ensure that you have that for sure.
James, thank you for that question. We have another question that came in French. Connor, how is your French?
Je ne parle pas le français.
So, courtesy Google Translate. Um, the gist of it is basically, should I buy my EV first? Should I have an electrician come to my condo to see if it's possible to install charging first? Or should I talk to Hydro-Quebec about it?
Yeah, so I think first things first, if you're in a condominium setting, which it sounds like, or a multi-res setting at that application, I would recommend in that specific case, go find out what it's going to cost and how easy it is to put the charger in your apartment building.
To the
Uh,
condo board, or yeah.
yeah. Like, well, if it's a condo, speak to the condo board. If it's an apartment building, speak with the landlord. But understand that first, because that application is far more expensive than what we talked about today. Today is more focused on single family home application, and those numbers quoted is more for that specific use case. In a condominium or an apartment building of some description, you could be looking at double or much greater the cost. So if you're going to purchase an EV, make sure that's part of your budget if you're in that application, because it could be quite expensive. And the last thing you'd want to do is go buy the car and then find out you can't get a charger or you can't afford to put it in the underground, because that'll be inconvenient and not a great experience for you.
Yeah, that starts to get beyond the scope of today's webinar because we really wanted to talk about home installation, but putting chargers in a multi-unit residential building like a condo, an apartment, is a whole other kettle of fish. And it's definitely worth doing at some point a webinar on that subject because about 1/3 of Canadians live in multi-unit residential buildings. And so as EV adoption continues to grow and increase, we need to deal with those folks. And I know, Connor, you at Charge Guys do that work all the time. So you are a good resource, but I know that most people
For sure.
today came here to talk about their homes, the residential homes.
For sure.
Let's see. This is a bit of a distance from our main topic, but someone says, I have a 2017 Bolt and my home charger works well. I've never charged other than at home. Do I need a converter to access other chargers on the road?
You said Bolt or Volt?
Bolt.
Bolt, yeah. So, if you're driving a Bolt, most of the public chargers will be the J1772. The only instance where you would need the adapter is if you tried to use the Tesla stations with the NACS connector.
So you're in pretty good shape right now, but as years go on, we're going to see more of the NACS connectors that you'll need an adapter for.
Yeah.
There's another electrician question. So how much does the length of electrical wire negatively impact charging performance and necessitate the selection of thicker wiring so as to protect against overheating and fires?
That's a great question. And that's something that your contractor doing the install will be able to calculate, but voltage drop is a real thing, right? The further away from the power source, the panel, to where the charger is, the bigger your wire size needs to be. So you have to size that appropriately. Otherwise, you are going to not get enough power to the charger. That's also comes into play if you use like one of your level 1 chargers and an extension cord, and the extension cord is really long, you'll see that voltage drop at the charger. When you look at your app on your car, you won't be getting the full power that the charger delivers, because there's that drop in voltage along the wire. So you definitely need to consider that and ensure that if you're using a licensed contractor, they'll size that properly. And when they get their permit signed off, that will be part of the factor. They'll be looking at the amperage of the charger, the wire, the breaker, everything installed to ensure that you don't have that issue. But you do want to make sure that you'd factor for that, so that at the charger, you're getting the power that you actually want and what the charger can deliver.
Mitch asks, what are the highest capacity chargers for homes? Can you also speak about the best charging times and other recommended setups for large EV batteries like the Hummer or Silverado?
Yeah, so the largest one for most home applications would be an 80 amp. So it's quite large. And that's probably something along the lines of what you would want for the Hummer. Because the Hummer is about a 250 kilowatt battery, and the 80 amp charger will give you about 19 kilowatts or so per hour. So if you do the math on that, like, you're not going to be draining the battery entirely. You'll keep things between 20 and 80%. That's sort of your recommended range when you're driving your EV. So, you're going to be charging about 60% of the battery, which is about 150 kilowatts. So that'll take, on an 80 amp charger with the Hummer, that'll take about 7-8 hours. So that's perfect for go to bed at night, plug in, wake up in the morning, and you'll be up to 80%.
And time-wise, I assume it's look at your local utility at their time of use rates and schedule your charging appropriately.
Yeah, and as I kind of mentioned, like, if you are in certain areas, like, check with your utility. I'll use Toronto as an example because that's where I live, and they have the ultra low overnight rate. So you have to opt in for that price plan directly with utility. It's not automatic. You reach out, you select that price plan, and then you can set your time to charge during 12 and I think it's 6 a.m. here, and it's 2.5 cents.
7, yeah.
7 a.m. Yeah, it's 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So
Which just went up, unfortunately, but everything went up. Yeah, I'll also mention, if you are in the Ontario Hydro jurisdiction, you can go on through your account, using your account number, you can go in and see all of your activity, energy usage, and so on. And this offering of the ultra low off-peak rate is easy to check. So they have your history, right? They know how you currently use your energy and electricity, and you can click and it will show you, if I had been on the ultra low rate for the last year, how much would it cost me, or how much would I have saved? And that makes it very easy to decide whether it makes sense for you based on your usage. Because the other trade-off, of course, is that you get this super off-peak rate, but during peak times, I believe it's from 4 p.m. till 9 p.m., you actually pay a premium for electricity during that time. So if you have an EV, you're going to definitely win in that arrangement. There's a very good chance you will, but you can check it and you'll know ahead of time. So just check online.
Okay, here's an interesting one from Richard. If I go on a 2-week vacation, is it safe to leave my vehicle plugged in, or should the charger be disconnected or powered off while I'm away?
I would recommend disconnecting while you're away, personally. It doesn't make a difference either, like, too much either way, but it's just not a big deal if you unplug it, and then you don't have to turn the charger off. You can leave it on at all times. It can have power going to it.
I'll debate you on that one after the webinar, because I would have said the opposite, and we've had some folks who deal with battery health and so on. And the suggestion is you dial it back, because the other ability you have with these cars is you can dial your charge level. You don't charge it to 100% every night in most cases. You can say just charge it to 50% or 60 or 70%. And so if you're going away, 2 weeks isn't a terribly long time. If it was longer than that, you can preserve your charge at, say, 60%, which is healthy for the battery, and it's perfectly safe, right, to leave it plugged in and turned on. So I'll debate you on that one afterwards.
Okay. Here's a follow-up question from Quebec. Isabel says that she lives in a condo building with only 6 units and a garage and no garage, and the parking space is near her hydro-Quebec meter. So it sounds like individual metering. In that scenario, do you think it makes sense to have an electrician come and do an assessment before buying her new to her bolt in December?
Definitely. I would say in that case for sure, if it's not an underground parking, you said?
Correct. It sounds like surface parking.
Right. So yeah, you could have civil expenses, right? I can't speak to the exact situation there, but like you could have some civil costs as part of that if it's outdoor parking, in order to actually install the charger safely. If there's a wall there and things, then that could be pretty easy, but it's not, without seeing it, it's hard to give great guidance. So I would say, it's not going to hurt to check and see what that cost is first before you go ahead.
But let's do one more, and then I think we should probably wrap.
One last quick one. V2H. Anyone local that you're aware of that's had experience with installing a bidirectional system for their EV? And by V2H, for everyone, it's vehicle to home, allowing power from your EV to power your home.
Yeah, like we've only really done one vehicle to home install, but it didn't back into the grid. It was more just set up as like a backup for a generator in the event that the power went out. Because, like, for example, the F-150 is bi-directional, so you can power your home for, I think it's 2 or 3 days with that connection, but it wasn't set up to go back into the grid or anything like that. You can add solar, you can add all sorts of different things to it, but it's something you'd have to explore specifically for your case and how that would relate to, where you live too, because depending on your jurisdiction, the utility could have other programs available for that as well.
Thank you, Connor, for sharing your expertise today. And thanks to all of you for the thoughtful questions and active participation. We sincerely hope you found this running electric presentation helpful as you plan your own home charger installation. If you have additional questions after today, please don't hesitate to reach out through the Running Electric website. We're here to help you make a smooth, informed transition to electric mobility. Thank you all for participating in this presentation.